This is Issue, and I am the Ghetto Man. Today's issue, fascism. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Fascism was established in Italy in 1925 by Benito Mussolini. Fascism, the term fascism, is derived from the Italian term fasci, which means a bundle of sticks. It's a symbol for strength and unity. Now, Mussolini has been credited for coining the term fascism, when in fact it was an Italian socialist philosopher named Giovanni Gentile between 1875 and 1944 that actually came up with the term fascism. Well, what is fascism anyway? Well, contrary to popular belief, fascism is actually a form of socialism. Fascists are socialists with a national identity, racial superiority, or as they are commonly referred to as national socialists. With fascism, the state controls everything. Totalitarian control of the nation, its economy, and its people. Now, this is primarily done through a state and corporate power merger. Now, Giovanni Gentile said, quote, fascism should more properly be called corporatism because it is the merger of state and corporate power, unquote. Now, governments, they don't know anything about business. If you watch how people run government, you can see that they never could run a business. Nobody in government that I have met knows how to run a business. And if they did, they sure as heck wouldn't be in government. And big businesses understands this and takes advantage of this very fact. So fascism begins when corporations amalgamate with government. Corporations take part in creating and enforcing the nation's laws. Corporations become an appendage to the legislative branch of government and willingly participate in assisting the legislator in writing laws. Laws that benefit corporate interests, of course, while enslaving public interest by forcing people to purchase their goods and services under penalty of law. This is why the socialist, communist, democratic left does not want you to know about Giovanni Gentile and his socialist fascist roots. The left wants you to believe that fascism is a right-wing ideology when in fact it's a radical left-wing socialist ideology instead. This is why the left doesn't want you to know what fascism really means. The left uses the term fascism and Nazi as if they are right-winged or a conservative political position, when in fact fascism is clearly a left-wing radical ideology. You see, fascism clearly fits the left's agenda, state control of everything. Now, fascists, like socialist, communist, Democrats, believe in one party. They believe in the totalitarian control of the nation and its economy. Now, Hitler modeled his National Socialist Party by following Benito Mussolini's lead, including racial superiority. Like fascists, the Nazis were leftist National Socialists as well. Remember the National Socialist German Workers' Party, as it were? So when somebody tells you that they are a National Socialist, what they are really telling you is that they are a fascist/Nazi, or at least identify with the fascist/Nazi political philosophy. Today, in my opinion, The working definition of fascism is, simply put, the merger of state and corporate power. Corporations writing the law, then using the police power of the state to physically enforce or force corporate law and power on its citizens. Corporatism, sometimes you hear that term. Corporatism, when you hear it, is fascism, and fascism is corporatism. They are synonymous terms. But whatever you want to call it, this is how I identify it. And so I'm going to give you a few examples of what I think is fascism here in the good old U.S. of A. Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution authorized Congress, and Congress only, nobody else, no other branch of government, authorized Congress the power to coin our money, regulate the value thereof, and set the standards and weights and measurements. This is only granted to Congress, and Congress can't give it to some other branch of the government or give it away, especially to some private corporate interest. Well, in 1913, Congress did just that. They delegated its constitutional authority to create money over to a privately owned bank, and that bank is called the Federal Reserve Bank, thus merging the state, the government, with a corporate entity. Okay, that's fascism. Okay, that's a good example of it. We are now forced to use this private fiat corporate money, and fiat meaning it has no value whatever. It's just based upon faith. We're forced to use this fiat, corporate private money, and we're forced to use it in violation of the law, Article 1, Section 8 and 10. Article 1, Section 10 says that no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin, a tender payment in debt. It doesn't allow any other money to be used for paying our taxes and paying our bills and that sort of thing. Not that you can't use private money, but Congress is the one that's supposed to issue the money. It isn't supposed to be delegated over to some private corporation. And this is also, what they did is also a violation of the Coinage Act of 1792 and 1900. Now, I'm not going to get into these things right now. We'll cover that later in a show on money. So today we are forced to borrow this private money that has no value, plus interest, to be used in our economy, instead of lawful money. Gold and silver coin is mandated by the Constitution and the two different coinage acts. We are now forced to use these Federal Reserve notes to pay taxes, fines, government fees, and our bills, all in violation of the Constitution. What's interesting, the 16th Amendment, which was also supposedly ratified in 1913, the same year that the Federal Reserve came into power, was never even ratified. There was two gentlemen, one by the name of Red Beckman, another one by the name of Bill Benson. They went to the various different states and they got certified copies of the ratification of the 16th Amendment, found out that the states had not ratified it. In fact, Philander Knox, who was then the Secretary of State, falsified the records, which allowed the 16th Amendment to come in, which then ties us in to the Title 26, which is the income tax code. And it turns out that the income tax code is basically set up, the IRS is basically a private collection agency for this private corporate bank, the Federal Reserve, to collect the interest on the money that's borrowed. In fact, not one penny that is collected by the IRS goes to any services, government services, or anything that for the military or anything else. Every single penny that's collected through the IRS goes directly on the interest on the loan, which wouldn't exist if we were coining our own money and issuing currency that had actual value, substance. Well, anyway, the book that they wrote was called The Law That Never Was. The case, Benson and Beckman, I guess they went as far as the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that that they couldn't rule on this because it was a political question. And, of course, Congress said, well, they're not going to do anything because it's a legal question. So there you have it, the catch-22. The government's not going to do anything. Another good example of fascism in the United States would be the car insurance industry. We are forced now by law to purchase a private corporation's service, which is insurance. I mean, what was the purpose of insurance in the first place? Wasn't it person bought insurance to protect themselves from some unforeseen disaster or incident that would occur to their life, liberty, or property, right? Okay, so if you wanted to purchase insurance, it was a choice. It was like buying any other product or service. You say, I think I'd like to have this to protect my house or protect my car or to protect my family. And you made that choice. But see, the insurance companies, what they did is they lobbied Congress, and then they write the laws for Congress, which then are passed by Congress, and then they force the populace to purchase their services, their insurance. And if you don't do it, then you're going to suffer some sort of penalty. And it could be as simple as a fine because you didn't buy something, or it could be as you could actually go to jail for it. Okay? And this is how fascism creeps in, because the government doesn't have the authority to mandate that anybody buy any goods or services from any private corporation. And you sure as heck can't have the private corporations just merge with government and then have those corporations run at least their portion of the industry by the force of law, by the police state. But that's what they do. It was interesting because I had an incident that happened years ago in Arizona. I didn't have an old $500 truck I was driving. I didn't have it insured, and so I got a ticket. I didn't have it registered too, and of course it wasn't insured. And I got a ticket for no registration insurance. And I remember I went up before the judge, and the judge said to me, he said, I have a $30,000 Cadillac. And he says, if you don't have insurance, what do I do if you run into my $30,000 Cadillac? So I told the judge straight up. I said, well, I'll tell you, Your Honor, if you're really worried about me taking my $500 truck and running into your $30,000 Cadillac, then I suggest that you buy some insurance. Because that's how it works. You buy insurance to protect yourself from the unknown. Because as I told him, I says, I got a $500 truck. I don't really care if you run into my $500 truck with your $30,000 Cadillac, because I'll just go out and buy another $500 truck. And that's how simple this is. Of course, I have some religious arguments that also fall into play when it comes to these mandatory insurance laws. And you see, when we're dealing with any of the insurance companies, and I mean, a prime example is the so-called Obamacare that they have. I guess the mandate has been dropped now. But once again, here you have the insurance company, private insurance companies that are writing the laws. They're lobbying Congress, writing the laws. And then Congress passes laws that forces you to have to purchase somebody else's service, in this case, health insurance. They have taken away your right as a sovereign individual to make choices on what you want to do in your life and who you're going to buy products from or not buy products from. This is how fascism works. This is how it creeps into a nation. It creeps in through programs like mandatory insurance and mandatory insurance for cars and for health insurance. These are all forms of fascism. And whenever you see the corporation, you're going to always see the fascism following. I mean, what about cities? I mean, cities are corporate entities. Most cities are incorporated. There's some that aren't. But the ones that are incorporated, they have a corporate charter just like any other corporate business. And then these corporations, what do? They set up their own laws. They make laws for the community. You got to cut your grass. You can't have any gardens in your front yards. You can't have a house you can't live in it unless it's hooked up to water. I mean, there's a whole plethora of things that cities impose upon people when it comes to their rights to their property within the boundaries of the city. But see, you're in a corporation. It's a corporation. It's the police. They're not there to protect you. They're there to enforce the corporate law. That's what this is all about. This is your fascism. This is how it works. This is how you identify it in your own backyard. I mean, everything that the governments do that force you to buy any type of service. In fact, even paying taxes for the schools. If you're not using the schools, you shouldn't have to pay for them. Then we're having some interesting things are happening now, dealing with like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I mean, these organizations, these corporations, they're trying to do that which the government can't do, and that's, interfere with a person's right to freedom of speech. So since the government can't bridge your freedom of speech, what they do is they incorporate these businesses, YouTube's, Facebook, Twitter. They're all corporations. And then these corporations merge. They're already merged with government anyway, because the corporations are creatures of the state. They're created by the state. Their corporate charters are created by the state. Therefore, they have to do everything that they're required under that corporate charter. The state is their partner. And then these corporations go on and they start censoring people's free speech. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, they're all starting to use algorithms, and they're trying to identify hate speech and all these things. Even though there is no exception for hate speech under the First Amendment, they're trying to do that which the government cannot. And the government is a partner, so they are involved. And I really feel that these things should be treated more like utilities instead of social networks where people get together and share ideas and stuff. They should be considered utilities. And like any utility, they can't discriminate against somebody or deny them a constitutionally protected right in order to have their service. But that's an argument for another day. Another one of my biggest beefs is like the American Bar Association. The American Bar Association controls the entire judicial branch of government. If you're going to be a judge, at least in Montana, I can't speak for the other state, but if you're going to be a judge in Montana, I mean a district judge, someone that's up above the lower court level, the justice courts, police courts, and that sort of thing, which are not really courts of record. We're talking about the district courts. Nobody can be a judge unless you first have been a lawyer, a member of a private corporation, the American Bar Association. These are private corporations. And these corporations are controlling who can and cannot be a judge. They are the ones who are involved in writing the constitutional mandates, at least here in Montana. You're not allowed to be you cannot be a district court judge or voted in unless, of course, you've been a member of the bar first. So you can be a police officer and have absolutely no understanding of the law. You can be a legislator and be up there writing law, passing laws, and creating law. And you don't have to be a lawyer to be a legislator, create law. And don't have to be a lawyer to be a cop. But when it comes to the judicial branch of government, all of a sudden you've got to be a member of this private corporation that has merged with the judiciary. Fascism. That controls the entire judiciary system and forces people to use their people, their officers of the court, so to speak. You have to hire them for your problems, and if you decide to do it any other way, then you're going to receive all these unconstitutional obstacles that the American Bar Association and the judges, who were all lawyers at one time, have created to keep the average person out. This is unconstitutional, but they do it anyway. I'm going to wrap this thing up. Anytime you are forced by government to purchase any private business's goods or services, you are looking at fascism. If you're politically correct, then you're legally wrong. And if you're not part of the solution, then you are the problem. Please subscribe to our channel, follow and share. You can also find us on VidMe and YouTube. I am the Ghetto Man. Thank you for watching.